All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me today is Coach Mike Silbernagel. He is the manager of sports performance at Sanford Sports, formerly known as Sanford Power. How many people who I'm sure will listen to or watch this will know Coach Silby from is the former strength and conditioning coach at University of Mary. He was also part of the strength and conditioning staffs at Colorado State and University of North Dakota at one point. Coach Silby, how was your schedule changed from going into the summer sessions versus what you get to see during school when I'm sure more athletes come after school and into the evening, whereas now I'm sure athletes of all ages can be up at Sanford for longer periods of time during the day.
Yeah, you know what? I think it changes from the facet of summers in North Dakota are awesome. So most people want to be outsides in the afternoon, not inside. So we are uh, really hopping from about 6 a.m. till 11, and then we have a little bit of a break. Then we have a couple early afternoon groups where during the school year, it's almost flip flopped. We might have a couple in the morning and then really amp up from early afternoon through the evening.
Gotcha. Definitely an interesting schedule, and I'm sure it's a little different than what you're used to up on the hill. So for your former athletes, that me being one of them, of course, my brother being one of them that you had so many of in your time up at University of Mary. For your former athletes wondering what you're doing now compared to what you did in the college weight room, can you briefly explain what your current position is and what your job description looks like now?
Yeah, so right now, manager of Sanford Sports. I'll be honest, it sounds a little bit weird not having the title of head strength coach or assistant strength coach that I had for a very long time in my career. But in reality, it's very much so the same thing with slight changes. So we actually up at Sanford Sports have a variety of different things within our location, from physical therapist, occupational therapist, return to play individual who I think you know very well, to academy coaches with baseball and hockey, and then we have strength conditioning coaches as well. Um, and then it's not just in the Bismarck area. We basically have coaches that are in satellite locations all throughout Western North Dakota. And to quote one of the individuals that talked to me about this position, I get to be a coach of coaches on top of coaching athletes on a daily basis.
It's awesome. How are you liking the new position? I know some admin comes with your new job, not just coaching. So I know there's a couple twists and turns that you might not be used to, but how's the new position been treating you?
It's been nice. It's obviously there's things about the college world that you'll never replace, right? I think as a former college athlete, you understand that, but
Hmm.
there's also things that maybe you didn't completely see that were around, right? Like working with the
Hmm.
police department, working with the adult population that comes in and trains. Then at the same time, getting to kind of see the fire start in youth when you're talking to middle schoolers and elementary
Hmm.
school students, and that's where we all fell in love with what we do, right? Whether that was football, wrestling, baseball, or training in general. So it's been fun to see those sides of things. Um, I guess the real answer would be talk to me in the fall when it's the first time in a long time that I'm not going to be wearing a logo.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a lot differently, especially visually. But so you kind of just briefly touched on it, but I'm looking forward to our conversation just about strength training and kind of even some tiny little things I'll get to that a lot of people overlook in this field that can benefit your body, your mind, and a lot like some things people might know about, but they have no idea how to use it or the benefits of it that we'll get to. But some athletes, and just from my own perspective, I know a couple people I went to school with that went into college with ideas of what they wanted, and then the more they got into strength training, or the more I view it as they started to understand their body and how their body moved, which developed kind of an interest or a passion for strength and conditioning. So I feel like, especially when I again think about it, like the exercise science field. So when did your passion, at what age did you kind of get interested in the strength and conditioning or the weightlifting field itself? Was it early age or was it later when you started getting into the weight room and understanding how a weight room operated? I know when I talk about people not being aware of how their body operates, and that's kind of what sparks their interest later on. But some people look at a weight room as a scary place, and they get into it, and they finally learn and understand how to use a weight room. So maybe that might spark some of their interest. But for you individually, where did your passion and interest spark in the strength and conditioning world?
Well, I think the easiest way to say it is farm kid, right, from Napoleon, North Dakota, and not a huge city by any way, shape, or form. And our weight room now is better than it was then. But really started in kind of junior high, high school type era when you're just going up, and we didn't have all the social media. There was no TikTok or Instagram to tell you how to do things, or YouTube clips, right? You just went in and maybe you looked at a magazine and said, I want to look like that, or I want to be like that person that you saw on TV. But I think that was always the place that I controlled the variables, right? And I kind of like that factor of like, if I
Mhm.
want to get stronger, I can control if I get stronger. I couldn't always control playing time. You can't control how tall you are. You know, I've shaved my head now for many years, can't control how much hair you have, right? But in the weight room, you could always like have the final say. Like if you worked hard enough, if you stayed dedicated enough, and that's what really kind of drew me to it, but in a naive way. I didn't really know what that all meant, right?
Yep.
So uh, before my senior year of high school, I did kind of essentially a program that we now offer in the summer here. I did a summer program with some people in Bismarck and realized, wait a minute, that's a job. Like I can actually do this from a
Yeah.
career standpoint. Um, and I've told this story before, but I went into there was no exercise science at Valley City State when I first started, like there is now. So there was athletic training and there was physical education, and I double majored. So I was like, I'm going to go do that. In my very first class of athletic training 101, we start talking about taping ankles, right? And we're going through the Arnheim book and this and that. And I get done at the end. I go up to the professor. I'm like, ah,
This isn't for me.
when are we going to start training? Right? Like the class is labeled athletic training 101, and all we did was talk about ankles and injuries today. And he started laughing. He's like, "Well, I don't think exactly, right page." But Don Brunges was his name, and he's like, "I think you should stick it out because I do think it will help you
Mhm.
in your career." Finished up the whole teaching thing, was able to take part in a college training program. I was fortunate enough, or not fortunate enough, I'm going to look at it my junior and senior year to give some input as to how we trained. Was really kind of dug into it. Did an internship with John Frappier in Fargo and realized that I needed to get to a college setting in order to really take off. And
Yeah.
my first week up at UND, I realized I didn't know what I was doing. So the learning continued. So it was part of it was naivety of what the profession actually was, to be honest with you. Like there was really no one in the state of North Dakota other than NDSU and UND at that time that actually had a strength coach.
Oh
Definitely
yeah.
not like it is right now. So it that's kind of how it expanded.
Gotcha. So on the topic of developmental programs, I know so many people I've been able to chat with on this podcast. I mean, myself being an elementary teacher and a youth coach in the fall, and I mean, I've talked to coaches about how we should talk development at every age, and no matter how skilled or how talented or how strong a player is at any level, you're still talking about developmental. We're not talking about it at a youth standpoint if you're talking to high school coaches, but you're still talking developmental. So your programs up at Sanford feature different age and grade levels. I know you even have some developmental programs for the middle school kids, which is awesome because that was unheard of when I was at that age. And I mean, if I could have walked into your weight room at University of Mary with any knowledge of how to power clean, I probably would have looked a little different than the 6'1", 180-pound scrawny baseball player walking into your weight room. But it will sound obvious that I say what kids at middle school are doing in the weight room looks a lot different than what you're doing with, say, the Bismarck Bobcats. What kind of stuff, and hopefully even some people listening to this might even have a kid who they're questioning, well, how late or how early, I should say, how early of an age should a kid be in a weight room before they hurt themselves, or technique, or how much weight should they be carrying before they as they're still growing into their body. So, what kind of approach, I guess, do you have when those sixth graders who have never been in a weight room walk into the weight room? What kind of approach as a coach do you have with them?
I think it's something that's often overlooked is we get caught up on chronological age real quick, right? And we
Mhm.
don't actually look at what is their training age. Um, so I'm going to dive into that quick, then I'll kind of back up and answer the straight up question. But really, if someone can't move proficiently, it doesn't matter if they're a freshman in college or a freshman in high school or a fifth grader. We need to get the individual to be able to control what we need them to control before we can really build upon it. Right? And I think that's where everyone's like, oh man, it's got to be so different. But I think in some aspects, there's a lot of similarities. It's going to be different in terms of the load, right? Like I'm not going to have a middle
Mhm.
schooler squatting 400 pounds, right? And we're
I
not
hope
going to
not.
be doing some of those things. One rep maxes are kind of out the window uh, because you need to create that base. There's
Mhm.
comments made. Louis Simmons made the comment a lot that a pyramid it can only be as tall as the base is wide. So the earlier we can start laying that foundation and creating a base, the more stable everything's going to be long term over time, right? So when we come in and we're dealing with elementary school kids before we even get to middle school, like we're just looking at foundational pieces. Can we
Mhm.
hold a position for time? Can we skip? Can we bound? Can we jump? Right? Like when I grew up, there was man. Well, they are banned now. You don't see any of the old school playground equipment that we had. Right? There's no merry-go-rounds. There's nothing metal. Like you used to burn
Mhm.
yourself going down the metal slide. But those things that you usually saw and did, we want to make sure that the athletes can do it at a young age in the right way, getting those
Mhm.
movement patterns down, not getting caught into numbers, and making sure that uh, consistency is the number one key in that. There's a couple different ways you can build upon that, Kyler. To be honest
Mhm.
with you, is if you walk into the facility, hopefully what you're going to see is an organized structure taking place where feedback's going to be given, and we're not looking for perfection, but we're looking for improvement. So sometimes people
Mhm.
think, oh, a body weight push up is safer than a bench press. Well, if you're a middle schooler and you weigh 120 pounds, you might not be able to do a push up if your relative strength isn't very high.
Yeah.
But you can actually bench
Correctly with
press.
good form. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can actually bench press the bar, which is 45 pounds, or we have technique bars that are 15 at a much easier rate. Now it's just
Mhm.
making sure we're teaching the progressions. I know you coach some football and some baseball, right? Like if you're not breaking down those fundamental skills, that's where the injuries occur. So can we teach someone how to get set up underneath the bench press? Can we teach someone how to brace and breathe and produce force before we load them at a very high level?
Gotcha. So my next focus kind of comes from myself being in the weight room with Mary baseball when I was at up at University of Mary playing in the program, while also connecting it to being aware of what my brother did as a football player and seeing the football team and how differently baseball and football look in a weight room. And I know so many people who are outside of who might be, I shouldn't say who are outside of sports, who might be outside of sports, but a lot of people who don't really understand what goes on in the weight room or and I say that from a stance of people think a lot of college athletes, well, you're just going to lift weights to get jacked and get muscular and get huge, and it's so much different than that. And I even after my college playing days now, I work out 2 or 3 times a week at the gym, and I continue to learn that the more I work out, the better I feel, which sounds obvious, but I'm not going to Verge looking to get jacked, and I'm not looking going to look muscular and be able to rip out of my shirt when I go out with friends. I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like a lot of people think of, especially they see you and other strength coaches walking around who are in a gym every day doing your jobs. But where I'm going with this is when you look at, and I'll just focus on baseball versus football for a moment because obviously that's my brother and I in completely different weight room perspectives. But when you look at the process of what you guys take to have baseball players in the gym, maybe I mean I think you guys have BSC up there in the gym with the baseball team versus when you have football players up there. What is your focus on with baseball players versus football players since their bodies have to move so differently, their bodies are going to look different. I know we're starting to see, even watching the College World Series, you're seeing these 6'8", 250-pound pitchers for Florida coming out throwing 100 miles an hour, which is just kind of the new look of a baseball player being stronger. But can you kind of talk about the differences and what you guys focus on depending on the sport?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna kind of break it all the way down. And I'll build it all the way up into that sport. Like, number one, I don't train sport specific. I train athlete specific with sport demands in mind.
Okay.
Okay. And what I mean by that is I think sometimes when people think sport specific, they think of a barbell hooked up to bands and you're
Mm-hmm.
swinging it. And then you're going to, you know, you play wide receiver. So I'm going to throw a 45-pound dumbbell at you and make you drag your toe in the corner of the weight room as you catch
Correct.
that dumbbell, right? Like, we want to train athlete specific first. So we know athletes need to be explosive. They need to be powerful. They need to have strength. They need to have durability. They need to have speed, but also repeated sprintability and a level of endurance, right? So we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to create that more tools in the toolbox from a general standpoint first, right? So that's like the general aspect, giving more tools to the athlete's toolbox. Now, in the college world, as you said, or maybe even as you get into high school, you might see it, but specifically college, now you're going to go, they're focusing on something specific. You're no longer the multi-sport athlete. You're a singular sport athlete. We can break things down a little bit more specifically. There's a needs analysis to that sport. What are the high injury rates? Where are those located? And what we can do to mitigate those? Your brother playing defensive line needed broader shoulders and more durability from the collisions that he was going to take than you did
Mm-hmm.
on the baseball field, right?
Yep.
If you're talking a track athlete, we don't want to add that extra upper body mass that's not going to translate to speed on the track. We want to make sure that we're adding muscle mass in the right places and then doing movements that now create strength into power, into speed within that.
So kind of connected to that also, when I podcasted with Paxton Miller, who you probably had for a year or two still, and towards the end of your tenure up at Mary, Paxton, of course, former baseball player at Legacy, and also played some years at University of Mary. When I talked to him, we briefly discussed, and again, this came more for me in college when I started realizing, oh, a weight room doesn't just make you stronger and make you bigger, but it teaches your body how to move better. You have to think about how your body moves, and your shortstop's going to move differently than your pitcher, and your catcher is going to move differently than your pitcher who's pushing off a rubber on the mound. So can you talk about how you look at tailoring each sport? I know you just kind of touched on a little bit, especially with my brother being a defensive lineman, but how you tailor how you're coaching to how you know that their body needs to move. And I'll also connect this to a couple questions ago, talking about the Bismarck Bobcats. You have hockey players coming in here who have to skate, and and we all know some hockey players look interesting when they run because they cross their arms. I mean, that's just kind of a guy with a lack of hockey knowledge, just kind of connecting how a hockey player moves in general. But maybe even bringing hockey into the conversation might make it easier, just with, again, how athletes' bodies move goes so much into how they have to build strength.
Yeah, so I think we start off, you look at the off season first, right? Like, we start with basically general movement patterns and trying to create some of those compensation patterns that take place. You mentioned hockey. Well, hockey's so much anterior in their quads that they don't have really much for hamstrings and glutes, right? Everything's
Mm-hmm.
going to impinge on that front side of their hip. If you look at some of the injuries that take place, uh, that's one of the locations based on their stride patterns and how they push off and just the biomechanics of it. So really, we're going to try to do something that's anti that movement pattern at the beginning, Kyler, to make sure that we can allow them to do what they need to do on the ice, right? The most specific thing to the sport is the sport itself. So starting off, how can we be generalists in order to become specialists, right? So as we get closer to the given sport, now we're going to start to go, hey, we need to make sure that you can hold these positions. How can we get to where we're efficient in the movement we've built over the general aspects of the offseason? Now we're getting into that specificity. Everyone talks about getting ready for the season. I'm more so worried about the athletes getting ready for practice. Practice is harder than any game, whether you're talking 2 days in football, whether you're talking the fall ball, for baseball. Traveling in games is actually quite easy once you get going, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how are we looking at those movement patterns and making sure we're touching on them enough to where they're improving, but we're not overusing the same movement. It's kind of like wheels on a tire. Eventually, the tire is going to wear out, right? Just
Yeah.
rotations. So we want to make sure that we're using those rotations at the right time to where the athlete can get the most benefit from them in their given sport.
So a few months ago, we had a book study out at school, and I know I'd been able to do a podcast with another teacher at our school, but you and my mom, who are both working up at Sanford now, came up and were sharing some knowledge, and it was awesome to have you guys. But one question that I'm sure just people who might be listening to this, I'll just predict a few of our teachers, maybe some educators that I know, pretty consistently listen to some of these episodes, but for people who, again, sometimes it's a fear of, I don't know how to use equipment at a gym, or first I have to get there. I don't have time to go to the gym. I have a half hour. I need to go knock something out and be purposeful and get something out of it and not just go waste my time. So for anybody who might ask, where do I start? And I know when you met with us, you were talking about, well, what is it you want to improve? I mean, there's videos, there's TikToks, there's reels everywhere on social media. But for anybody that's looking to build strength or to even just get back into consistency of working out, what is your advice for people who just are looking to start somewhere, but they don't know where to start?
I think the first thing you have to do is you just kind of touched on is you have to write down what you actually want, right? Like without a plan, you're destined to fail. It's like you have GPS on your phone or in your vehicle, but you don't actually type in the destination, then you complain that you don't know how to get there.
Mhm.
Because each pathway that you're talking about, whether that's athletics, general health, strength, weight loss, conditioning, running a marathon or a 5K, they all have different routes
Mhm.
to get there. And then the second thing is you actually have to act upon it. And I think those are the two hardest parts that I see with individuals is number one, we're not specific enough with what our goals are because we don't want to fail. So if I don't tell you what my goal really is, I can never fail, right? Like if I
Mhm.
don't tell you that I want to bench press 225 and I never bench press 225, it's no longer, there's no pressure to it,
Yep.
right? Like it didn't really happen. Number two is actually just starting, right? Like you just rattled off a bunch of reasons why someone couldn't do something,
Mhm.
right? And I would argue I could come up with a bunch of reasons why you could do it right there on the side of your couch and you could get 20 minutes in and something over nothing and seeing how things stack together. Right. And then the last thing is just consistency. Something over nothing. I don't care if that's a 5-minute walk once a day. You add that up, that's 35 minutes a week. Right. Not super good at math, but you add 30 minutes a week times 50 weeks. Right. Now
Mhm.
you're getting up there in terms of what the total time is compared to doing nothing. And that's just a 5-minute walk. What if you did push-ups the same way? What if you did bodyweight squats? Things of that nature. Those things will all add up over time.
And I think you talk about things that are holding you back or just things that you're finding to not allow yourself to do it. I know when you came out to Lincoln and talked, you have your own gym with your boys in the garage, and you said the only thing holding me back from working out today is the garage door. And I mean, it's so obvious, and I know not everybody has one. A lot of people have to go to the gym, but and we'll get to here in just a moment. My two biggest benefits for myself that I've kind of built into going to workout, but really briefly again, another point that you touched on when you came out to school was how you are not, and I know you kind of looked at my mom and you're like, I don't know if she's gonna like this mindset or not, but this is how I roll. You're not necessarily a goals person. You're I need to be better today than I was yesterday. Can you more so than myself asking you, can you kind of talk about what your mindset is, what's really not being a goal setter and being in the strength business?
Well, I think, you know, we get caught up on goals. We make these great things and we become people who are really good at writing down some of this stuff sometimes, but we don't ever act on it. And then we start comparing goals. Like that's where it gets tricky. So I'm not necessarily anti-goal, but when we have it, then I compare it to yours. And
Yep.
now, well, how come mine isn't being achieved like yours is, et cetera? And we open up Instagram and well, that person's goal. Wow, I got to change my goal to do what that person's doing. And then TikTok's a whole new animal to where if you're just worried about being better than you were yesterday, you have an opportunity to win every single day. And if it's a day
Mhm.
that you don't win, like if I have a great day today, and I know tomorrow's going to be a tough day to beat, that's still a win because it's above most of my days. But if I don't look at it day to day, I'm missing the little things that'll add up, right? And I think the more opportunities I have to be successful, the more wins, as I just mentioned, the more likely I am to continue something, right? That could be as little as
Mhm.
something as my family, we grew up eating desserts after everything. I think we're the only ones that had dessert after breakfast, right? But if it could be something to where I'm going to have fruit for dessert today, simple thing. It's easy to
Mhm.
track, right? I didn't have to have an app for that. I didn't have anything else. I know, did I have fruit for dessert? Yes or no? And in my notebook, I can write down 0 for 3, 1 for 3, 2 for 3, or 3 for 3. And I have instant feedback as to how I potentially have to do tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
So the better than you were today mentality, I think, just allows you to see those small victories and continue to build upon them.
So two big things that can be both found at a gym, whether people know what they are and know how to use them. I use them both, and they're kind of again my positive incentive now to, hey, when you go to the gym today, there's actually another one in there that comes beforehand that I believe yours is coffee and Snickers that I'll get to in a second. But there's two big ones that have majorly just, I mean, I've used one since college, and I just started using one 2 months ago, and I'll ask your opinion on them. Well, kind of want to know your thoughts because when I talk about them, I don't have a lot of scientific knowledge behind them. I'm just like, they're good for your body and they feel really good at the end and they make your body feel much better after working out. So that's why I use them. And if anyone would say, well, give me 10 benefits, it would all pertain to myself. The first one is foam roll, which my question is, I know we'd foam roll after workouts at Mary, but um, I mean, months ago started foam rolling before and after, and it feels fantastic, as you might be fully aware, because I know you foam roll and you literally taught us how to foam roll and what to foam roll and the benefits of it. But as a strength coach, can you talk to, again, an audience that may not even know what a foam roll is, let alone how to use a foam roll, kind of the purpose of a foam roll and the benefits of using one?
Yeah, so I think it's number one. It's a form of soft tissue manipulation. You don't have to have a specific foam roller to do it. You can use a tennis ball, you can use a lacrosse ball, softball. Like I know McQuaid's just finished. I'm sure there's a bunch of busted up softballs that from guys that just and gals that crushed it, so to speak, right? But it's you're going to use this implement and perform version of self massage, right? You're going to find the spot in your body that doesn't feel very good, and you're going to go back and forth and maybe even stop and lean on it and let that aspect dig in. And for starters, it's going to increase blood flow because of the friction from the
Mm-hmm.
foam roller and your body. You're going to be going back and forth, supporting yourself. So that's going to increase your blood flow, which is going to make your body warmer, which is going to help make you more pliable. There is some talk out there that foam rolling is going to bust knots up in your body. Well, your muscle can't detach and tie itself into a knot
Yeah.
and then detach and undo it. But what it can do is it can work on manipulating that fascia in terms of warming it up and making it more pliable and also increasing blood flow to and from that location, which therefore makes you feel better. Right. And you mentioned before or after. The reason I liked it after is a great way to kind of get you guys to clear your head, get that
Mm-hmm.
first step in recovery going. Where the last thing I wanted to do right before a college workout was to get you guys to
Relax.
all like relax and calm down, right? Whereas now, if someone to come into the facility and we're 5 minutes early, yeah, foam roll a little bit. It's not going to do any harm
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
whatsoever in that aspect.
Feels fantastic too. My second one that I just started using in the last couple months, and it literally, when it's not turned on or it was out of order last week at Verge, and I almost didn't even want to work out when I walked in and saw it was out of order. But a sauna, benefits for your body. How long do you sit in a sauna? I usually go about 10 to 15 minutes after I work out. I went weeks ago. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go before and after and see how that goes. And I'll say after walking out before my workout, I was like, I'm about ready to take a nap, not work out here. So I'm never doing that. I'm sitting on the squat rack about to fall asleep. But can you talk about? I mean, I think you can buy one of these at Shields now, like infrared. I know. Yeah, I mean they can't be too expensive online for people who want them in their house. I definitely don't need it in my house because I just go to Virgin, use their really nice one. But can you talk about the benefits for your body with the sauna? Time length for anybody wondering how long should they be sitting in a sauna for whatever.
Yeah, I think number one is there's two types, right? There's a dry sauna, which is your infrared, and then there's your traditional sauna that has moisture. Both are going to have their benefits based on what they're doing. Your traditional sauna is going to get a lot warmer and have
Mm-hmm.
more of that humid feel, which me personally, I'm not a fan of. I like the dry sauna better, just so I can breathe better uh, in that. Um, First and foremost, when using a sauna, you're going to sweat. So people have to understand that the rehydration, not only of water, but electrolytes is going to be key.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you may lose some of the benefits of the sauna. Um, we know that, again, increasing blood temperature, heart rate's going to go up. There's some research out there showing that it can even increase your cardiovascular health if you're in there as little as 10 minutes a day. Temperature wise, in a dry sauna, you're looking at probably in that 130 to 140 range. Your traditional saunas are going to get much warmer.
Mm-hmm.
You just like working out, you got to start with a progression. You go into a sauna for the first time for 30 minutes,
Oh
it is going
gosh.
to beat your body down, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to start small and build up. Now, the other benefits of it from a recovery standpoint, I like using the sauna, then hopping in a cold shower for a contrast. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be really cold, just like lukewarm, and it's going to feel cold compared to what that sauna was to
Yeah.
open everything up, close everything back up, and then make it hot again. It's going to increase blood flow. There's been proof that you could potentially sleep better after using the sauna, and it's almost like a meditation aspect. I've got a uh, infrared in my basement because I live far away from Verge, so I decided to get my own. But you can put a podcast on, you can put some music on, and just kind of allow yourself to relax and almost clear your mind on top of the physiological benefits.
Yeah, I just used. We only played 2 games with McQuaid's, but used one yesterday, and I'm like, I haven't sat in the sauna for 2 weeks, and I feel like a brand new person now. It's absolutely fantastic. But the kind of last sub point attached to that, I know I mentioned it a few minutes ago, was I guess pre-workout. I got into one. I asked Jaron about one because I know him and his teammates probably took them throughout their time at Mary, and he sent me a few recommendations. I'm like, these look like they want to kill me, so I might start smaller here. But I know when I remember texting you a few months ago asking for recommendations, and you said coffee and Snickers, and I'm like, I don't like either of those, so I'm gonna go a different route. But it's
Well,
definitely helped get me more in tuned in the gym. So
I'll give you a hard time, and your brother as well. Uh, I always say, if you need a pre-workout to get going, do you really want to work out? Right?
it's
Like,
true.
and that's, you can take that how you guys want it, but uh, to me, if you need something to get going, you got to remember the motivation that you claimed in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Now, take that out in talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The reason I said a coffee and a Snickers is you're getting a jolt of caffeine, you're getting a jolt of sugar, quick carbohydrates, and even a little bit of a protein source. Not much, but a little bit in that Snicker bar. And most people, you're weird, like Snickers, right? You can have Reese's peanut butter cups you want to. You're allergic to peanuts, go with Hershey's, right? I get it, but you want that little bit of what you're
Mhm.
going with. I have even seen people who do a pre and post uh, chocolate milk primer, 8 ounces, right? Like we've talked about the post workout aspect. Taking it 30 minutes to 45 minutes prior to can also increase action at sugar from the chocolate and the chocolate milk. I think you got to be careful when you're looking at pre-workouts, energy drinks, etc., just because it's unregulated. We really don't know what's going on. Um, I'm not trying to get on a soapbox here, Kyler, or make anybody feel like they're a bad person, but we talk about how we want to make sure we're doing this for health and for our family or ourselves and those around us. But if you grab any pre-workout, tell me if you could spell the words if I
Oh God,
pronounce
no,
them to you, right?
not a chance.
So that's why, to me, I'm also a keep it simple type of an individual. I get you might need to pick me up here and there, uh, but can we keep it as simple as possible to get where we want to go?
Yep. So one thing I've kind of tried to start doing for people who join me on here before we do sign off is is there any questions that you have for me? Whether I know for you it's more in the strength and the coaching business, maybe a little bit of education on the side, of course, being a coach, but any questions or any topics of discussions you have for myself?
I think I'm gonna see if is anything that you learned during your time as an athlete has that carried over into your teaching career.
Oh, absolutely. I would say, I mean, so many things. I like what I do is as a profession, just even in the classroom, I would a lot of mindset, a lot of, I guess, positivity, almost. I know I teach fourth grade and I can't really say we just get after it during the day, but it's, I mean, some days you have to flip the switch. I mean, just knowing how people operate. I mean, I that comes with a lot of different angles. I mean, whether it's just getting more into teaching experience or coaching and just knowing kids, but I just think, yeah, it's a lot of mindset stuff, and I think that's a lot attached to sports and being in sports growing up. But I think just the expectations you have for yourself, the expectations you have for your students. I know there's no leeway in Coach Silby's weight room, that's for sure. But yeah, I've benefited in so many ways. Not just knowing how to use a weight room, and I know I've talked to you just in casual conversations and different sporting events usually of, I have zero certification. I'm definitely not a strength coach, but I can pretty confidently use a weight room, and I've had many, I wouldn't say many, I don't know what the number is, probably a handful or two of people coming up to me at the gym asking, how do you get so much depth on your squats? How are you doing this, that, and this? I'm like, I guess I was just taught the right technique. And I know, I guess it doesn't connect to teaching, but just myself in a weight room. I did it the other day. I was thinking, I want to go up in weight right now, but my form's going to go out the door and it's not going to end well. So I guess that definitely has carried over. And every time I'm at the weight room, I'll I'll say I'm squatting and benching more now than I did my sophomore year at Mary. So I guess that's, being a dad makes you stronger, is what a few of my buddies and I do say, I should say. But yeah, I would
Oh,
say a lot of it's just mindset. I've always been a big mindset person, been a pretty big, I know you have your motivational quotes you guys put up on your board up at Sanford that kind of click the brain in the morning, but I know I do a lot of that with my students, especially during testing season, getting the juices flowing. But yeah.
no, that's great. I bring that up because I think sometimes people only think of sport in one way, right?
Hmm.
In terms of wins and losses. So just like you, I've been able to bring things from what we've done into our career. I guess then the second thing is more so, did you ever think that you'd continue to be, the gym goer that you are? Do you think it'd be that big of your life once you finished playing sports? Right? Because I've had
I
former
was
athletes of mine telling me like, nope, I'm never doing an inchworm again. I'm never squatting, it's leg press or bust for the rest of my life type of a scenario.
He also asked me this because he asked all of his athletes, "What's one thing you'll never do in a weight room ever again?" And he hadn't even finished the sentence, and I said, "Reverse inchworm. Never again will you see me do reverse inchworm." But I was actually thinking about this past weekend when I was kind of piecing more stuff together for topics for us. But I think even when I was done at Mary, and I only played 2 years at Mary before I kind of went more in the education department. But I mean, I was still in the weight room my junior and senior. I think it just became part of my routine. There's times during football season where I'm so busy with my kid and school and football practice that I'm like, I haven't worked out in 3 weeks and I'm starting to feel it. Not necessarily like I feel weak, I don't feel strong anymore, but I mean, you can obviously attest to it, and I'm sure you have athletes that, I know when we go for Christmas break, you would tell all of your athletes the next 2 weeks are the most important weeks of your off season, because you take 2 weeks off from lifting and we got to take 5 steps back and nobody else is going to be ready for that. Again, I was thinking about that the past couple of days, is the fact that I still have goals of, I want to lift at least 2, maybe even 3 days a week. And not just to bulk up and look jacked, obviously, as we both know, that's certainly not my goal, but just to feel good, just to get the consistency. And I just feel so much better. I was talking to one of our softball teammates at McQuaid's, and I said, he asked how much I work out, and I was like, do I look like I work out? He goes, well, you look a little more like pieced together than you have in the last couple of years. I'm like, well, number one, I carry around a 35-pound 2-year-old most of the time. That might contribute to some good positivity. But I said, in the past couple of years, we play softball on Thursday nights, and I don't know if it was a fear of just being sore, but sometimes I would avoid lifting on Wednesdays or Thursdays because I didn't want to go to softball just feeling wrecked and my shoulders hurting and whatnot. And now this summer, I've been trying to lift on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I have felt fantastic. And you probably might even smile at that statement because it's probably obvious that, yes, I got my body moving around Wednesday and I felt fantastic Thursday, but it's been a massive benefit. I've felt better. I probably run better. My legs probably feel better. I can probably throw pretty well because I'm working on my shoulder more often. But yeah, I think just the confidence in the weight room and the knowledge of, and I, like I mentioned, some of these guys you see at the gym, they're trying to lift all this weight, but their technique is awful, and then they show up the next day and their back hurts and this hurts and this hurts because they don't do it correctly, and it's pretty obvious. But yeah, I've had several instances the last couple of weeks at a gym where I'm like, I want to go up in body weight, but I'm gonna get 3 reps in and everything's gonna go downhill. So do I really want to go up right now?
I think if there's anything that your listeners can take away, one thing that stuck out to me is it's what you do,
Hmm.
right? Like you've made training part of who you are. And I think as soon as you do that and you take away all this isn't a 30-day challenge. This isn't just until I hit this number of weight on the bar, but it's just training is what I do, right?
Yep.
It's something that my kids, I'll be honest, my son will be in on September 1st, to be 3 years. He's been lifting 3 days a week, right? Like, and it's just what we do now. When
Yep.
we're at Disneyland, he's like, well, let's get a workout in. And we're not going to a gym, we're doing a workout in the grass. We're doing something, and it just becomes a lot easier when it's what you do, not what you have to do.
Yep. And for listeners who caught that, he's not talking about going to a $50,000 Alabama weight room, even though Alabama's weight room is definitely not $50,000. I shouldn't have even said that, but even your front yard or your backyard, there's your workout. You don't have to have hundreds of dollars in workout and barbells throwing stuff around to work out. So appreciate you saying that, and I do greatly have to express my gratitude for you, and I got to give a shout out to Coach Jung as well. I know when I was hurt years ago, you drove by me in Lincoln and said, "Property of Coach Jung, the guy walking around on crutches over here." So, but no, you guys, again, I had walked in the University of Mary's weight room, being in a weight room at Bismarck High, but not being very experienced or very knowledgeable of technique and weight, and just gonna pick these dumbbells up and do some bicep curls for 10 minutes, and we'll see how we feel. But and I know it's transpired in so many of your former athletes. I know you have, I mean, Danny Williams is over here traveling the country in all sorts of weight rooms, but a lot of that is because of you, what you and your staff do at Mary, and you do a great job, and all of your former athletes greatly appreciate it because it'll carry on forever and ever and benefit us in so many ways. So thank you for all you've done for myself and all of your former and current athletes.
I appreciate that, and I would goes without saying how proud I am to see what you've turned into, right? Like oftentimes we see you guys as 18 to 21, 22-year olds. And I don't think any of us necessarily want to go back to that phase of our lives.
Nope.
But it is really cool to see you guys mature and become who you have. So proud of you as well.
Thank you. Anything else before we sign off?
I got nothing. I got nothing. I got to train here in a little bit.
All right. I trained yesterday and I'll go work out again tomorrow before the long weekend. And I find all sorts of excuses over the weekend not to go to the gym. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining me, and have a great rest of your summer, and tell the boys I said hi.
Thanks. And if anybody's looking for things to do, swing by Sanford Sports. We'll help you out.
Absolutely. Thank you.